Me, how do you get your crush to ask you out, instead of you having to ask her out? So how's that happen?
Oh gosh, I don't know. I've never been asked that before, but
Hello guys, welcome to Young, Clever and Wealthy, where I interview the movers and shakers that decided to live an extraordinary life so you can learn how to live on your own terms. Today's guest is Emily Frisella. She is the Paper and Plan co-founder. Okay. Also, she is COO of 44/7 Media and RT Syndicate. Uh, I guess 44/7 Media is something that
yeah,
has to do
a
with
little bit of
this.
everything.
So it looks like I got all of the products. Anyway, she's awesome. She also was a co-host of the Curious Me podcast. She has a book club that I'm also part of called Freedom Reads. Um, Overall, she's awesome. How are you doing, Emily, today?
Good. I feel like I need to minimize that down and just be like, here, just go check her out here.
There you go.
But thank you for the intro. I appreciate it. And
There
you
you go.
did. You landed all the businesses and the products. So
Yeah, we got everything here. Come
yes,
on.
gold star, gold star.
There you go.
Thanks for
There you
having
go.
me on. I'm really excited.
Please, for the people that don't know you, how about you introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name is Emily Frisella. I have been an entrepreneur for 20 years. I started my first brick and mortar business when I was 20 years old, and it was a flower shop. And then I evolved that into a luxury gift boutique, tuxedo rentals, wedding planning, in-home decor. And that was my first kind of go at being an entrepreneur. I come from an entrepreneur family. My dad was he owned trucking companies and brokerage firms my entire life. So that's all I was ever modeled was the entrepreneur lifestyle. So I've never known what a 9 to 5 life is. And I wouldn't have it any other way because I love what I do. I love the challenges every day, meeting new people, collaborating with people. So it's just, I felt like I was, definitely born to be an entrepreneur. I tried the 9 to 5 job once and that was not a go. So here I am running a lot of businesses that I feel like I'm insane for sometimes. So
There you go. There you go. There you go.
yeah.
That's awesome. So I want to dig deep into, this is young, clever, and wealthy. Doesn't need to be young in terms of age, but it's young in the young mindset. But you, I've heard you were pretty successful at a young age after figuring some things out. So
Yeah.
I'd love for you to tell us that story. With the building that you got for your business,
Yeah.
you sold
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. So, I knew from like I shared an early age that I wanted to be an entrepreneur because my dad was an entrepreneur. And my parents always instilled in me, like, buy your house, buy a house, don't rent, buy. And so I knew this from like as early as I can remember. So I remember at age 14, I always did like little side hustles as a kid. I made keychains and sold them in my dad's office. I would sell things to other family members and craft things. It was junk, but people bought it and made me feel good. So at 14, I took my first quote real job. I was a waitress and I worked at a golf course. And I loved waitressing so much because I just met so many great people. And this is important for the story moving forward. So I met so many great people. I loved all the people that I would wait on because I would work Friday, Saturdays, and Sundays. I would intentionally ask for the busiest shifts so I could make the most tips. And I would go to volleyball practice 2 hours after school. And then I would go work at the restaurant until it closed. And that's how I got my start. And I saved every single penny I could because I knew I wanted to buy a house whenever I was going to move out.
Hmm.
And so I moved out. I bought my first house when I was 19, had to
Wow.
redo it all, but I was able to because I had saved for 5 years of, from all the money that I made from tips. And I also worked at a grocery store in that time. I did babysitting, still worked at the golf course. I did everything I could to make as much money as possible. So at 19, I bought my house. And then at 20 is when I bought my first commercial property, which was a building, land, and some storage units on it. So I purchased that. And this is where I say the importance of me being 14, waiting on the customers. And I loved all the people that I was waiting on at the restaurant. It's because those relationships that I was building then served me 6 years down the road when I opened my first business because I had had so many supporters in our community already. And it wasn't just like immediate, family and friends. It was the people like, oh, that gal, she was our waitress at the diner and things like that. So they all came out to support me. So I had this huge influx of support from day
Wow.
one. And it was absolutely amazing. Well, growing up in an entrepreneurship family, I thought that this was somehow in my DNA. Like it was ingrained, like I'm going to know everything. I don't need to ask anybody. You're 20 years old, so your ego is bigger than life.
Yep.
You are stubborn as hell. You don't want to take direction because you think you know better. Well, I did not know better. So you fast forward, we're a year into business. I'm 21 at this time. And I didn't understand a lot of the aspects of business. I had an accountant to help with taxes and all the legal stuff. But aside just from paying my mortgage on the building and everything, I didn't understand vendor terms. Like I had it was absolutely beautiful. Like it would still rival any gift shop to this day, probably because everything was hand selected, luxurious, handmade, local. It was beautiful. But I didn't understand vendor terms, conditions, all the little ups and downs, like all the building maintenance I would have and the commercial property prices or insurance and everything like that. So this was before online banking happened. And so you couldn't just log into your bank and see what you had. You had to wait till the end. You're probably too young to remember this, but you used to have to wait every month to get a statement from your bank to show how much money you had. And unless you wanted to stop at the bank and find out for yourself. Well, I get a bank statement and I was like, okay, I'll balance this later. And I put it aside. Well, guess what? After 3 or 4 months of not making it a priority, I had one of my employees, I had 6 full-time employees at the time. And she came to me and pulled me aside quietly. And she said, Emily, I just went to the bank to cash my check. And they said they can't cash it because there's insufficient funds. Now she banked at the same bank I banked at, so they could immediately tell. And I turned, how when you're in panic, you turn hot and you're you heat up real fast. I took it from her and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. The bank must have just totally messed up. I'm just going to get it fixed right now. So I left, and my drive to the bank, it was only a mile away. I was like, oh my gosh, what's happening? This has to be a mistake, but again, I ignored those few, 3 or 4 months of bank statements thinking I'll do it later. And I get to the bank and guess what? They didn't make a mistake. I had, and I had all this money coming in. I didn't realize I was spending it just as fast. And so I got myself into some trouble there. So I was like, okay, I gotta fix this right now. Cause this is so embarrassing because all my employees were older than I am. And I didn't want them to think that I got this young, dumb kid that's trying to, have a business and can't even keep enough money in the bank to pay us. So I went to my house, got my savings account, and I just took a withdrawal from my savings, put it into my business account to cover payroll and all the other checks that I had written just to stay good with everybody. And then, that fixed it temporarily. But the problem is, and I share this with my book that's coming out, it's the problem with that is that I had to continue this lie without letting on to my employees that I was in trouble. So I had to, if I would have just shown a little bit more honesty and integrity to them and just been open and honest and let them know your job is secure, but here's what the situation is. Instead, I had to continue this charade of, I had to hustle and become so resourceful and resilient through this whole thing, but still keep a cool front that nothing was wrong. And so I went into full hustle mode and I did everything I could. I didn't have any money to advertise. So, I would go around to all the other businesses and share my product, flowers that had maybe 4 or 5 days left to live that I couldn't sell in my shop anymore. I'd make little arrangements, take them there and put them on their front counter. That way customers could see it, try to get some advertising. I actually cut off 14 inches of my hair for Locks of Love to be able to get a front page ad. Cause in our small town that worked. And they always publicized when business owners did stuff. So I was on the front page of the paper holding my long 14-inch ponytail they cut off, and it had my name, the business. But I did that knowing that paper, it was circulated to the 6 surrounding cities that I also delivered flowers to. So I was able to capitalize on that. I called the paper and said, hey, what's your biggest circulation day? And they said Wednesday. I timed it so my story would go in Wednesday's paper to get the most circulation in 6 cities to get the most free advertising by cutting off my hair. So it was just, that was the most embarrassing and terrible moment. But now looking back on it 20 years later or 19 years later, it is the most important part of, I feel my whole quote story. And I know that I never want to be in that place. And I learned so much because that humbled me immediately. My ego just suddenly vanished. And I was fresh. And it's I didn't even ask my dad, who's a successful entrepreneur my entire life. I never asked him for any advice, because I was so stubborn and stuck in my, my ego.
Wow, I love that. So many things there that are worth unpacking. I want to ask you, do you still have that magazine or
The newspaper, yeah, it's somewhere down
newspaper.
in yeah, it's somewhere in storage in our basement in like our keepsake area.
That's so cool, you know.
Yeah.
That's so cool, but the you know, one thing that I like from the story is that you had you had um, you had the people that already trusted you. You know, you already did some things with, and then when you start a new business, you went on and you know you had people, right? So that's
Yeah.
super important. And as I look back, I remember seeing you start Paper and Planco, and then like within weeks you had like I don't know how many pallets already like in warehouses from your stories,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I'm like, what, how's that happen, right? How's that happen? And it seems like it's the same process. Like you build like trust, you build goodwill over time. Is that the case? And what is the
Absolutely.
lesson there for people?
No, it's 100% relationships first. That's, the title of my new book, because that's what it all boils down to, because people just want to open up for business and expect sales. But the thing is that it's all the point of relationships of, it's taking the time to craft these relationships and build from that, not necessarily ever expecting a sale. I know that my products aren't for everybody, and that's fine, but I still want to build a relationship with that person because one, I just, I like people. But it's also because what, my product may not be right for, let's say my product may not be right for you, but it might be right for your family or your sister or a friend or someone else, right? And then that is a word of mouth, like, oh, hey, I don't use a paper planner, but my friend Emily, she has a company, that blah blah blah, and that's how the conversation starts. So relationship building is so important. It takes time. It can't be done inauthentically and disingenuous, because people can smell disingenuous people a mile away. That's not authenticity. So you have to go at it with, it might take 2 years of you working with a relationship, but the thing is, you can't ever go into it with wanting something out of it. You have to just go into it with providing value for that person.
I love that. I love that. And relationships first. That's the new book that you're coming up with. When is it coming up? And tell people like a little bit of what are you gonna talk to people about in this book?
Yeah. So I'm actually still currently waiting for the landing date. It was supposed to be out already, but with the paper shortages here in the US and, just shortages all over because of COVID and everything like that, we're still waiting for that actual date to get in, figure out with the printer. But it's based about like relationships first, people, passion, and profits. It all boils down to why relationships are the most important part of any business. And I relate 9 topics of business that are important and how people will perceive them as what to do, but how they all trigger back to a relationship mentality, because people want to go out and they want to make a sale, or they want to just like bash their competitors. That's not the way you do this. So it's like it's a direct read. And the reason I say direct read is when you open it up, you immediately start learning lessons, because I share tips and tricks from my trials and tribulations and all this stuff. So I share kind of like where I messed up, how it's important, and why hindsight's 2020 of sharing it now, and then how you can implement in your business. And there's also, think point worksheets in the back of the book. So with every chapter, you can go to the back and there's like 3 to 5 questions for you to kind of reflect on as either a leader, entrepreneur, if you're an entrepreneur, work with another company. The book is for you as far as kind of recrafting and also kind of retraining it. Because if people that are a veteran entrepreneur, they may have forgotten some of the little things that got them to where they are.
Mm. Yeah, I love that. I love that. And one of the you know one of the components of what I've heard so far is just being humble
Mm-hmm.
and being able to also like build a following, provide value, etc., etc. That I've seen from you, and people like you that are a big deal but don't act like you're a big deal, uh, mess it up for other people that are are not to your level, but they pretend to be, and etc., etc. One example is this. I'm gonna show you guys. This is the first message I sent Emily. It was August 2017.
Oh my gosh, that's crazy. I
And
didn't even know that.
yeah, and she replied, right, and she has hundreds of thousands of followers. She's busy. She has like 200 companies now running. So she replied, right? But then at the same time, at the same period, you have others who, who are like just too big to reply their comments, too big to reply to DMs, etc., etc.
Mhm.
So, I think that, that alone could be a great lesson for people that
Well,
they're trying to build a following, that are trying to, build goodwill with people.
there's something that I tell people when in regards to that. It's humble but not overlooked. You want to remain humble, but not enough to where you're overlooked for things. So that's
Hmm.
kind of just a easy mentality, if you will, of moving forward in that, because you don't want to get too big for your britches. Obviously, like I know tomorrow everything could be gone, and I don't ever take that for granted. And I know that I don't have a company if I don't have the supporters and followers that I do. You know what I mean? So to me, I try to get back to as many DMs and people as I can and things like that. I mean, obviously, I can't every single time, but I do try. But the thing is, it's without those people, I wouldn't have a company. So who am I to not to be rude and to take them for granted, right? It's about gratitude and appreciation.
I love that. I love that. So, going into books, obviously you're big into books. We are big into books.
Yeah.
We always ask, what are the top three books, that you would recommend anyone to learn, that would were the most impactful for you.
Okay.
Which ones would it be for you?
Well, it will be my book when it comes out. That'll be number one. No. Okay. I would say, as you know, Atomic Habits is a fabulous book that I feel like you need to read and reread. Leadership by John Maxwell. That's another one of my favorites. And The Four Agreements. And I feel like The Four Agreements is important for every single person in life, no matter if they're an entrepreneur, an employee. I mean, it's just, I feel like it's important for teenagers to read that book, excuse me, because because you've read all these books, we share the book lists and things, but the Four Agreements, if you've never read it, it is such an easy read. I think it's like 170 pages. You can just read it in an afternoon, but it's something that basically lets you, and this is very important if you're in business, to not take things personally. I used to be someone that if you would, and this is back in my younger years, that if you would say something to me, I would like take it to heart. I wouldn't get my feelings hurt, but I would just like sulk on it and let it kind of consume me for that day of like, man, what did I do? Like, they're not happy. What can I do to make that? And it took away from me progressing in my business because I was so consumed with, well, I said this, but should I have said, and I kept overthinking things and it was terrible, almost crippling. So reading that book, I do say, as simple as it is, that book did change my life because it made me realize that the way people react and what people do is not my responsibility. My responsibility is how I choose to handle it and how I choose to move forward with that.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. I am very pissed that I didn't know of this list sooner,
You
because
should have asked me back in 2017.
well, yeah, you're right. You're right. Atomic Habits. Oh my God! Like, if you guys to go to my website, I have a top 10 list. I mean, it's not updated, but Atomic Habits has to be top three immediately.
Mhm.
Um, I after I read it personally, my parents cannot believe people are close to me cannot believe that this is the Armand today. They cannot believe it. Like every day, everything is getting done every day. And that is the book. And sometimes you just need a guide from someone that knows what the hell they're talking about, and something that is very clear. And it can totally change everything. So I definitely recommend that.
Yeah.
Number two, leadership is a very interesting book. People that are like in their 20s or 30s, what I thought of leadership, the term is someone in their 50s or 60s, an old man that talks
The
about,
boss, the quote boss, and like,
yeah,
yeah, totally.
about old terms that are like up here, don't matter, right?
Yeah.
But in one of the books, I think it's on the 5 levels of leadership, he says leadership is just influence.
Yep.
That's it. So for people that they think that leadership is not important, leadership is just influence. You want more influence in your family, you want more influence in your peers, in your
Hmm.
company, whatever it is. So that's why leadership is important, and that book is powerful. And then yeah, definitely Four Agreements. You
Yeah.
just said everything there. You just
Yeah.
said
And with those books, and I've shared with you, it's like those are like annual reads. Those are books that are great to read every year as refreshers. And I've read them all multiple times, but I also like to use, visit them like through audiobook as well whenever I'm outside, because I catch different things when I read and I catch different things when I listen, because sometimes when it's read, it's spoken in a dialect that's slightly different than the way you would read it. And it is a little bit more impactful and you can understand as well. So those are my top three for sure.
Yeah, that's so important. Like the audio, reading it and then audiobook.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, exactly. You just said something very deep that I haven't realized. It's true. It's true. Like I think of things differently when I'm reading and then when I'm listening to the audiobook, different takeaways,
Yes.
right? So
Yeah.
that's huge. I mean, that's huge. You want to make sure you squeeze out the book, and wow, that's an amazing
Yeah.
tip. Thank you.
Yeah. Hey, no problem.
Uh, going into the tip, going into like tips for people, I wanted to ask you this question. If you had a daughter, what would be the three things you would teach her to become successful in life? I have little sisters, so I want to make sure that they're successful. So that's why I want to ask you.
Yeah. And okay, so I will preface this with saying I feel like this day and age, this is going to be more of a struggle due to social media, like Instagram and TikTok and all this type of comparison thing, that it's sad because I see young girls fall into these pit of comparisons, and they're 12, 13, 14 years old and they won't take a picture without a filter on it, or they're growing up and maturing so much faster than I feel is healthy, if you will. And I don't mean like going through like puberty or so. I mean, like the makeup is starting to, like heavy makeup, and the way they dress and the way they conduct themselves is not like kids. Like I see these pictures on Instagram of like me when I was 13 and 13-year-olds now. And it's like completely different. So I feel like there is more of a challenge for parents right now to make sure that they instill these strong values. And so one thing that my parents, it was probably the greatest gift they ever gave me is, I grew up in a successful household. However, I knew from an early age that my parents were not going to take care of me for the rest of my life, and they let me know that, like, if you want what your dad and I have, you are going to have to work for it yourself. So I attribute that. And I remember that line like it was yesterday. That's why I went to work at 14. And that's why I was able to buy my first house and buy my first business and start my life much earlier than most people my age, is because I had fantastic parents that instilled this in me. And they always let me explore different avenues of things. They never held me back because it was inconvenient for them. So what I mean by this is, it's easy nowadays. Your kids want to be in XYZ groups. Okay. But you think as a parent, like, I don't want to run them to this on Monday and then have to do this Tuesday and then go straight from there to this. They never did that. So my dad worked in his company, which was an hour and 20 minutes one way from our house in the city, because we grew up on a farm. So we had to drive to the city where his office was. So my mom had to be the runner for me and my two other sisters. And we were all very close in age. So she was like a ping pong ball, like going around constantly, but they never held us back from trying things and doing things. And I love that because I was able to do so many things in life to really choose what I wanted in my life and what I was good at and what my passion was. Because had I not had those experiences, they don't have to be anything that costs any money either. So it's not a money spending thing. It's just the experiences. I knew what I didn't want to do, and I knew what I was going to do and what I was good at, and things that I was good at that my parents could see I was good at. They nurtured that and fostered that to build that belief in me. And, like all parents, it's, oh, we believe in you. It wasn't just that. They went further than that to really help me to, like, okay, well, she's really good at this. Let's get her this, or let's get her a tutor that can help her further. Let's get her a mentor or something. So they were very good about this. And like I said, it wasn't a money thing. It was just finding the resources to help me. And then, the third thing I would think is that they, fostered the work ethic into me, because I saw that in my dad. They always shared with me, with my dad working so much, he wasn't able to come to my volleyball games or our school events or school plays or anything like that, because like I said, he's an hour and 20 minutes away. And back then that was before like email or cell phones really. So like you had to be in your office all day. But my mom always let us know that, my dad was working so hard to provide a life for us that we were able to do the things that we were doing. So,
Wow.
that was always very important to me, because I knew that, my dad wasn't at my volleyball game. It wasn't because he didn't love me or he didn't want to be there. It's because he was working so I could be on these volleyball teams and play on select leagues and have the life that we had. And, we were an upper middle class family, small farm town. My dad still farmed like crazy, but it was through the way that they raised me and the statements. My mom never ever, and this sticks out to me more now, seeing how men and women talk about their spouses now, like, oh, he's never home. Or, oh, your dad's not here again. Or they always say those things. Kids pick up on that. My mom never once said a negative word or frustration or anything about my dad. And they've been married now, I think 48 years. And but there was always a purpose to the hard work. So tying that purpose to the hard work, that not only in that moment did it make sense to me, but now I tie my hard work to a greater purpose.
Wow, I love that. I love that. You know, what you just said, even if it's reframing it to, me, to my daughters, the people that are listening are parents to their kids, in any situation, listen, I'm doing this for us.
Yep.
I'm doing this for us. It's a show of love. I just remember I have a client saying the same thing. You know, uh, my client was saying, my wife knows that the harder I work, it's a show of love to them and the family.
Yeah.
You know,
That's
and wow,
Yeah, no, that's exactly what it is because, and that's when, women get upset that their husband or boyfriend's working too much or vice versa. If the girlfriend's working too much or whatever it is, and they complain about it, that's selfish because you're just mad they're not there with you. But the thing is, they're working towards a life that you are a part of. And therefore you should be supporting that life, and their lifestyle and encouraging them and being, someone when they come home, they can actually like relax and they don't have to worry about you picking a fight with them or bickering or nagging them about something because you're both working very hard for a purpose and that needs to be understood in a relationship.
yeah. Well, talking about relationships, I have this question that I always intrigue me. How do you get your crush to ask you out? Instead of you having to ask her out. So how's that happen?
Oh gosh, I don't know. I've never been asked that before, but yeah. So it's I think it just because Andy and I had met and we knew each other for years, but we never really had any sort of like romantic interest in each other or anything by any means. And then we just started talking and everything, and I was like, okay, at first I didn't like him. This is like years when I first met him, and then we got to know each other a little bit, and then he just hanging out all the time, and I thought that he was just too shy to ask me out, so then I asked him out. So yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you
So
go. There you go. There you go. And one of the things that both of you talk about is just become who you want to attract. And I would love for you to expand a bit more there, because again, we have a lot of young guys that are hungry, et cetera, et cetera. They want to have the best life they can, reach their
yeah.
potential, and that's one of the components.
Yeah. So something that I feel that would be a good example to explain this, and it's very visual because we see it on social media all the time, is I'm not picking on girls, but this is just it's a thing with girls, with women doing, and actually it's not women, it is girls, because I don't feel like they classify as women if they're doing this. But it's like, oh, he's got to be at least 6 feet tall and make six figures, and he's got to have a nice car and a nice house, but yet they don't take care of themselves. They don't work this great job. They don't make six figures a year, and they can be the opposite of what they want from someone. Well, you're not becoming someone that would attract someone like that, because you have to show them, because driven people are attracted to driven people, because there's a meme I saw once that said like this girl was dating some like older wealthy man and she was like hardly getting by, and he said, would you be able to date someone that was making less money than you and didn't have any real drive or aspirations? And she answered, oh my gosh, no way. I could never date someone like that. And then he said, well, you realize you are the person that does not make that much money and does not have the aspirations. So it's kind of like that, you have to be able to mirror what you expect from someone, because, if you just go out there and you hope to find this great person, well, you're not going to find some woman or man that's, a CEO and driven and has good, moral compass and has a nice house or whatever you're looking for, if material things are your thing. You're not going to find that if you're the one that's hanging out in a bar 4 days a week, working, part-time job, just getting by and things like that. So that's where I feel like taking care of yourself, mentally, physically, emotionally is so important. And that's not a selfish act. People want to say it's selfish. And I feel when they say that, that's almost a cop out. Like, oh, I don't want to do that because it's selfish. If I go work out or if I go buy healthy food, it's going to be selfish or whatever. So it's investing in yourself in all areas because, how nice is it to have a conversation with someone that's on your level? Otherwise, you feel like you're always talking down to someone or they're talking over your head if it's vice versa. So it's becoming what you want to see in someone. So if you want someone that's driven, motivated, has a business or maybe an entrepreneur, you need to become those things.
Healthy,
Oh yeah.
healthy.
Healthy,
right?
in shape, takes care of themselves, all of that. You have to become that before you can ever attract that. Cause like, let's see here. What are you going to do? Like, if you want to meet that person, why would you not become that person? Cause what you want to reflect, because if you're wanting someone that's a driven individual in business, works out, takes care of themselves, well, guess what? If you guys are both in the same arena of you being a high level person in either in your company or you own a company, hey, if there's networking events, you might meet that person there. You're at the gym working out, taking care of yourself. You might meet the person that's taking care of themselves there. So it's not only just attract what you want, it's like, that's probably where you're going to end up meeting these people at as well.
Wow, I love that. I love that. And to not go any further, I mean, if you go and check Emily's videos, all Emily's videos on her channel, you
Oh
can see the
Lord.
transformation. There is actually a video. It's crazy. It's
Do
amazing.
not look at those. I need to just delete them.
No, don't do it. No, truly don't do it just because of this. Go
Yeah.
check. I think it's couples Q&A or something like that on YouTube.
Oh yeah. That was like 6, 7 years. Gosh, 7, 8 years ago. I can't
Yeah,
remember.
something like that. I remember seeing it when it came out, and then now see Andy, check Andy now, check Emily now, and it's like, oh my God, wow. So you want to have you know it those qualities or attributes
Yeah.
in a
Yeah.
person.
Well, because in that video, yeah, it's like we weren't taking care of ourselves as healthy like as we are now. It's like we were still going out drinking and eating shitty food. And like there's nothing wrong with that in moderation. But it's like we were, going out a couple nights a week or on the both nights on the weekends. And it's just crazy because I look back now and I was like, oh man, why did I do that to myself?
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah.
And one last thing to close this, I guess, relationship side of things. Um, you have been with Andy. I think you were even, is this, you were calling him because he owed some debts. Is
Yeah,
that accurate?
I was his bill collector. Yeah, we've been together 13 years. We've known each other 16 or 17.
That's crazy. So you basically knew him when he was broke, basically,
Yeah.
and
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
and until now, right? Which first, for I don't know if it's a billion-dollar company or multi-billion-dollar company, which is amazing. But I guess you had prime seating in the transformation that took place within Andy. So I would love for you to talk about what did you see, what habits, what things did you see that allowed him to go from there, which you knew him there, and then now.
Yeah. So yeah, whenever we met, I was his bill collector for the business that I worked for, and he was $70,000 in credit card debt, and the
Wow.
debt, yeah, but the debt was him building because he had two retail stores at the time. The debt was because of the bill because he had to live off of that because they weren't making any money or anything yet. So it wasn't like frivolous spending; it was actually like to buy inventory and things like that for the store. And I was trying to work out payment terms with him and things like that. And just as we got together, it's he's always been such a huge, like just a driven individual, such a visionary. Like when we first started dating, he showed me on the side of the interstate where First Form International headquarters is going to be one day. And it is only a quarter mile from the space that he showed me 10 years ago. Or
Wow.
actually, no, it's been 13 years ago. He showed me that because we've been married almost 10 years. And it was while we were dating. And so I always saw that in him, and he was so funny and just so charismatic. And that's what attracted me to him. And, I saw in him like his potential. I knew that he was not going to fail. Like he was just such a driven and caring person and took such good care of his employees. Even when he didn't have something, he would give to his employees. And I love that about him. He has such a good spirit. And yeah, we went on, and seeing this progress through this as employees grow. We were talking about our very first company banquet that was I mean, we were dating a few years. We were married a few years before we had the first one, and there was like 30 people there, and we invited like all our family and stuff just so we could fill the seats in the area. And now we have 700 people in house for our banquet. We have thousands of there's thousands of employees outside the four walls of the company, but it's not anything that's like, it's consistency. To answer your question, I was trying to think, there's not one thing, but I feel like it is. It's just consistency. He was consistently going after his goals, consistently visualizing them, consistently doing his vision board every year, consistently pushing the standard to make it better, consistently holding people to his standards of what's expected, and consistently showing up for people day after day in a way that they could rely upon him. So that's what I would say would be the change. Is just, there wasn't even necessarily a change. It's him remaining consistent for 23 years.
Wow. Well, such a great answer. Who do you know, or who do we know that has remained consistent on one thing for 23 years? Even marriages, people, try to, like first 10 years or whatever.
Yeah.
No one stays consistent on one thing, regardless whatever it is, for 23 years.
Right.
And, let alone business.
And I feel like that also, maybe that's something they're not consistent on it because they don't keep their vision big enough to keep it interesting, or they don't try to grow together. If we're talking about relationships, they don't try to better themselves together, because a lot of times when you talk to people and they, get divorced or something, it's because they grew apart, because they stopped trying. And there is instances where people do grow apart because they are completely different. They can't find that middle ground together. But, your business is, when you're an entrepreneur, your business is, you're married to that too. You know what I mean? So you have to take care of both of, your spouse and your business as the same, and pay them the attention. But it's consistently growing personally and being a student of personal growth and development, because that's how in a business you rebirth ideas. And that's how in a relationship, you both keep evolving, and you're rebirthing yourself over and over again. So you're always like, it's like meeting someone new every few years, because you constantly are like evolving as a person. And the same thing in your business.
Wow, that's so deep. That's so deep, and Andy talks about, like $12,000 from painting the things, having no freaking clue of what he was doing, and just constantly reinventing himself. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And yeah, like, that's, I've interviewed other people. I want to recap that because that's very important. Like, if you're not being a new person, I don't know, like every 2 or 3 years, in the good sense, if you're not recreating, from what I'm hearing, if you're not recreating yourself every 2 or 3 years and becoming better, something is wrong, right?
Right. Yeah. Think about it. The most simplistic form of this thought process is, think about if you're in third grade, you learn addition, subtraction, whatever, and you learn how to write in cursive. And that's it. Now think if they taught the same thing in grades 4 through 12, you're never growing. You're not tapping into your other potential that you have. You're not able to unleash what you may know, and you don't know what you know because you're not being challenged. So as we go through life, if we stop growing and, finding out who we are and developing new things and discovering more about ourselves, we stay stuck as who we are. And if other people are putting in the effort for personal growth and development, they're going to pass you up. And that's where this void comes between, someone that's saying the same might say, you're not the same person. This person that's not the same could say, yeah, I know I'm not. I fought hard to not be that person again, because you want to be better. So it's very important that you always try to like keep growing and evolving, but still, obviously, we're holding our attributes and our core values that are innate to us. But it's always important to just push yourself a little bit further to see what you can uncover.
Yeah, and again, like, I just wanted, like, this is honestly the biggest excuse killer I can see. Like, if someone that, again, if you go back to that video of Emily and Andy, or the couple Q&A, they had everything they needed in terms money wise and everything. They didn't have to do it. So if they manage to do it and then go with, this transformation, Andy has also an amazing transformation, you don't have any excuse. Because like, people are like, I don't have time. This is why it drives me nuts. I don't have time to do 75 hard. Dude, if Andy has time to do 75 hard, Emily has time to do 75 hard, you're
Yeah.
bullshitting yourself, you know?
Yeah. Absolutely.
So
Yeah. And it's funny because because you've done it, but you actually realize you have a lot more time than you thought you did when you do it. You're doing more stuff, but you learn one of the things is you master is time management. So, I agree with you. It's just it's a frustrating response. And then I say, well, how do you spend your time? Well, I mean, I got like and then it's like this, they start stuttering all of a sudden because it's because they don't want to do it.
exactly.
Yeah.
And from here, I just want to say, I am challenging any like I'm gonna send this video to a couple people. I'm challenging the friends that I grew up with. You guys finish 75 hard. I'll pay $1,000 once I see the screen of you guys finishing. Okay? Because
That's the
like that
before and
is
after you need.
oh, and the before and after. Because I truly believe if you fix that part, it's truly life changing. I mean, you already know this. I wasn't planning on talking about 75 hard here, but 75 hard is truly life changing. Um, I wonder how many people that are in depression right now, if they just started doing 75 hard, how many would get out of depression, literally?
Yeah.
And instead they're getting pills. You know, you talked with Angie about some of that stuff. It's crazy.
Yeah, it is. And it is something that's great, especially, with the state of the world right now to help kind of like, ease that anxiety, and there's only something to gain from it. You have nothing to lose at all. And it's going to help your mental clarity, how you process things, you're going to build like that perseverance, that determination, your grit, and you're going to, I mean, obviously the physical aspect is a great byproduct of it. But when you're eating a clean diet and everything, you're going to realize how much better you operate as a person because as a human, we're constantly under stressors. Our cortisol is always so high, trying to get everything done. We're eating crappy food, drinking crappy drinks, watching TV instead of movement, so it's kind of like an overhaul to your lifestyle. And 75 days, it may sound like a lot, but when you're in it, it's going to go by really fast. When you're done, you're going to be like, I can't believe it's already over. And then it's so funny because so many people, they love that feeling of doing it so much. They just want to, they'll take like a day or two off, then they'll start back again because they love that feeling.
Yeah, 1,000%. I have a friend who was in the military. He's like, I don't need 75 heart. I'm sorry, I need 75 heart every day of my life. Like
Yeah.
from now on, I'm sorry, I just did it. It just gives me an amazing structure and all that
Mm-hmm.
kind of good stuff.
Yeah.
Emily, we don't have much time, so I gonna want to go through a couple things quickly to make sure we cover them because I know they're important. Number one is the the charity side, right? You guys have this whole concept that I haven't seen you guys talk much about. That's why I wanted to bring it up about I much rather own the soup kitchen than, be a volunteer and all that kind of stuff. So tell people more about that, please.
Yeah. So what that means is that, people always say like, oh, money is the root of all evil. And that, to donate your time and things like that, which is great, but the thing is that you can give your time in person to charities and things like that. But how cool is it to work hard at something to where you can build enough wealth to build your own soup kitchens and help a lot more people and also employ people, or, you know what I mean? And like to own it and service it and do what you want with it. So that's what you just mentioned. That's meant for when people say like, oh, well, you're just, people want to make, you just want to make a lot of money and blah, blah, blah. And it's about, helping my community and stuff. Yes, it is. But if you're able to, you know, build new gymnasiums for your high schools in the area, build new football stadiums, build new baseball stadiums, build schools, build a lot of other things that contribute to your community, you're able to make a much larger impact on a larger scale doing that. So if people say money is the root of all evil, that's actually not even the full quote. That's not how it's even intended, but that's just the segment that people choose to use. So it's about, looking for the greater good of not only your own life, but the community and the people around you.
I love that. Hey, Emily, so what do you think about personality tests? You sent me some, and I wouldn't believe, I thought personality test would be like, um, yeah, something fun to do, whatever, but it has literally changed so much for me, understanding more about myself. I would love to for you to talk a little bit about that too.
Yeah, so I got into those several years ago because they're just so interesting to me. And I got into them because someone that I knew said, "Oh, well, I'm an Enneagram this number." And I was like, "A what?" Like I thought they sneezed or something. It was such a weird name. And they're like, "Oh, you've never done that?" I was like, "No." And they're like, "Dude, it's fun." I was like, I don't know. Cause I always feel like those tests, like you spend 20 minutes doing the test and you got to enter your email to get it's like a pain in the butt, right? I was like, oh, this is going to be so annoying. But I did it and I was like, holy cow, like this is spot on, because if anybody's ever done like the Myers-Briggs Enneagram test, you're going to know like what your Enneagram number is. And I've been an ENTJ, which if you are familiar with that, you understand what what that means. But so I did that one and it's like, it was so spot on in so many areas. I would say it's 98% accurate. And then I did this one called 16 personalities. It's just the number 16 and then personalities.com. And that one was hyper accurate as well. I was like, holy cow, this is just wild. So it just makes me so interested. Well, then I pivoted it and had my team take it as well. Because the reason I do this, it's not a hiring or firing mechanism. It's like, hey, let's all just take this test, see where we're at. Because as a leader, it helped me. And if you have a huge team, this may not be great. You might have to have like your divisions do it within themselves and those managers handle it. But for me, it was just more of like, it was fun for everybody. It was informative, but as a leader, it showed me how they respond to things. So I was able to not necessarily change the way I interact with them, but to let me know how they respond to certain things, which has helped me become a better leader because I understand how they operate and what's
Yeah,
important to them.
exactly. I love that. How do you have to give instructions to one type of personality versus another type of personality?
Mm-hmm.
And then also for myself, one last thing there is, I'm starting to learn more about what's my superpower or zone of genius because of this,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, and we're not taught this thing, so I highly recommend you guys go and do those tests. Emily, thank you so much for your time today. Where can people go and find more about you?
Well, thank you for having me. You guys, everything is just easy. Just go to emilyfrisella.com. You can click the link there, or you can, when you go to the website, you can find Instagram, all my junk, whatever. It's all there.
There you go. There you go. Well, thank you again. Thank you for everybody for listening, and we'll catch you another time. Bye bye.